Here's how long you should be taking oil of oregano the right way. And if you don't believe me, I work in Ayurvedic medicine and I've been in this space for over a decade. I actually have my own clinic right here in Los Angeles. And my goal is to help people live a holistic lifestyle instead of depending on antibiotics. Oil of oregano is nature's most strongest antibacterial property. But what exactly does that mean? It means that it can quite literally detect anything bad in your body. So think of yeast, candida, sinus, bacteria, microbial, anything that's bad in your body, and it detects it at the root problem and essentially flushes it out of your system.
This is a good example of what's wrong with taking an approach to health and medicine and healthcare products that's not based on reasonable science and evidence. So Ayurveda is basically just a traditional form of healthcare that is not explicitly based on science. As you can see, what you're getting there is some pretty explicit magical thinking justified by a pretty blatant appeal to nature fallacy, right? Oregano is somehow natural, therefore it magically will go into your body, it'll find and recognize what is bothering you and flush it out of your system. It somehow knows to go after the bad microorganisms and not the good ones. But then later on she says, you got to give yourself a break because it'll wipe out your good bacteria as well. So a little bit of contradiction there. But the appeal to nature fallacy is nonsense. What is oregano oil? It's a substance, it's a chemical, right? It is a combination of a bunch of different drugs. That's what it is. Some of them do have antimicrobial activity. But a lot of things, lots of things will kill bacteria or kill fungus or whatever if they come into contact with it in a high enough dose. That's not the tricky part. The tricky part is, will it be effective in a dose that is also safe? And that we have no idea about that. Why? Because there's no clinical studies. There is absolutely no evidence. So what she is doing, and the bobblehead pointing at her is agreeing with, is you start with just either complete speculation or maybe you have some preliminary preclinical data, like in a petri dish or maybe in a mouse, it has some kind of markers of some kind of antimicrobial activity. And then they leapfrog 20 years of clinical research and make clinical claims for it based upon, again, the appeal to nature nonsense. But we need to know lots of things about it. So first of all, what are we talking about? Topical use or internal use? For topical use, what dose? In what concentration? Over what period of time? Or what are the risks? What's the rate of an allergic reaction? What's the rate of just some kind of toxicity happening at that level? And then internally, you have a whole bunch of other issues we need to deal with. What's the bioavailability? How much of which active ingredients get absorbed? What does the body do to them? What do they do to the body? Where do they go in the body? How do they get eliminated? How long do they last? What is the dose that would be sufficiently toxic to different organisms? What's the side effects at that dose? How long should you take it for? You don't know any of these things. She says she just takes it for just routinely, like really, we're just taking antibiotics just routinely for just health. That's not a good idea. You're not supposed to do that. But in any case, she doesn't know what dose you're supposed to take or for how long or for what indications. We don't have that information. It doesn't exist. She's making it up, or at best basing it on anecdotal evidence, which is utterly worthless. In fact, if anything, it's more misleading than anything. So don't accept claims based upon some kind of appeal to nature or on traditional use or on just preliminary data from in a petri dish, in vitro studies or animal studies. Unless there's clinical data, clinical studies in people showing safety and efficacy, you cannot know what the net effect is. And our ability to guess is really bad. We have 100 years at least of scientific medicine where we could look back and say, how do we do when we just guess that something might be effective based upon this level of evidence? It turns out really bad. Most of the time, like 99% of the time, it doesn't work out. One of those many things I talked about go wrong. There's no bioavailability, or there's no dose range where you have benefits in excess of risks, or it causes kidney damage, or whatever, or too many people are allergic to it. There's so many things that can go wrong. We need clinical evidence, and it doesn't exist for oregano oil. It's a promising, at the most you could say is that it's a promising compound, and it should be studied so that we can answer all of these questions and then make actual recommendations. But basing clinical recommendations on the level of evidence we have now is malpractice. It's pseudoscience. It is nonsense.